Thank you for staying with us. It is time now for us to cut incisively into those issues impacting our country, whether for the good or for the bad. It's time for AM Exclusive, and my guest this morning is a man, he's a father figure. Let me just leave it at that. And he's a former UN Senior Governance Advisor. This morning we shared a hug when he came in, because for the first time, I'm not going to be speaking to him virtually or via phone. I'm going to be speaking to him face to face. He's in the person of Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah. Prof, thank you for coming.
Don't mention at all.
And you're looking
My
elegant
pleasure.
in your batakari.
Thank you.
So here we are, and we're going to have those all-important conversations. But here's where I want to start. Power, energy, electricity. Yesterday, my light went off, came on 5 times. And for me, the most irritating ones are there. It goes off, and then it comes, boom, then it's gone. Like in a second, it's gone. Those things do damage. Lots of damage.
Right.
I don't know what your situation is where you are, but a lot of people have complained. Some have said we need a timetable. The energy minister recently had some choice words for people asking for a timetable. I don't know whether you heard,
I read that.
but let me just read for you. So in reacting to some of what had happened, especially when, you know, the Taming General Hospital
Yes,
lost
I saw
power.
a video of that.
And a nurse there said, let me just read verbatim what she said. I don't want to paraphrase. They just turned the lights off at Taming General Hospital right now. If we don't get lights in a few minutes, the probability that we might lose a few babies is high. And per reports, some of these babies were left in a very precarious situation. Some have asked, why did the hospital not have a power plant, and maybe what else could have been done? But how do we also prioritize such entities? But then you hear the energy minister come and say, let those who want the timetable bring it. I don't know of any timetable because the ECG has said it is not necessary. Why should someone just wish evil for the country? People have now had to come up with their own timetables, because in some areas they're so constant that now you can have your own timetable. You don't need anyone to tell you. But how do you react to this? First of all, are you facing sane?
Yes, in a way. I was in Kumasi last week, and for 24 hours, I didn't have power. I left back here, and I was still told there was no power until 6 o'clock in the evening.
That means about 30 hours, no power.
Yes, in Kumasi. I think it's worse in Kumasi, perhaps, than many other places. Here in Accra, well, fortunately, I have a few, what do you call those places for solar. So somehow it kicks in when it's out. So I don't feel it as much as others without solar. But you know, the tragedy of all this is that towards the 2016 election, it was this same situation that I believe helped the ruling government to come into power. So one would have thought that such a thing will not be repeated. And this is happening also in an election year. And that makes it more curious. And the responses of public officials to this question has been very confusing. And at times I wonder whether there's any organization, so to speak, in what we do, whether our public officials are mindful of how citizens feel, because the reaction is coming from all over. In fact, the one you read from the Taming Hospital, when I saw it last night, it reminded me of what's going on in Gaza, where there's a brutal war against the Palestinians, and hospitals, we've shown them on the screen, how babies are dying because there's no power and all. But here we are not in a war condition. We have experienced this before. Why would we sit by 8 years later to have it repeated? That is a question that I think all of us should ponder. I do not have the answers. I'm not in this energy sector. But all we are getting is that perhaps there's not enough generation, but we are told there is a distribution. And yesterday I heard that...
Some say vehemently, contest vehemently, that there is no generational problem. It's not generation capacity. It's about the ability to pay, for example, WAPCO for the gas, for things to the natural course of things to follow. That is what some industry players say. But
I understand that. People are saying different things because we are not getting the truth from the source. And that's why people are speculating and making all kinds of statements on this. Governance, we always talk about transparency in governance. When you are transparent, you get your citizens to come along. At least if the situation is even not acceptable, they can tolerate it because you are even with them. But when there's no transparency in how our public services provide their service, then of course, you are going to have all this kind of speculation. And for me, it is such a tragic situation for a government that came to power, by and large, with this kind of a problem on the previous government, and then you come in 8 years, we have come back to zero. That for me is a tragedy. It means this country, either we don't learn, we don't want to go forward, or simply we have people who are running our affairs who don't have the competence. These are the conclusions I can make.
And there's a video from the Tema General Hospital, in respect of what happened. We'll see whether we can put out some of that shortly, just to paint a picture of what exactly transpired. As and when we have that ready, we'll take a look at them. But if you look, thankfully, the neonatal intensive care unit, the Tema General Hospital has a statement out, and it says that no life was lost during the 2-hour period of the blackout, which is something to celebrate. We thank God for that. But the reality, too, is that we could have easily lost lives.
Correct.
Because they were in incubators.
Correct.
That means that we would have, in fact, we started failing those children right from day one, right from birth.
Correct. In fact, the video that came out, I believe it was sent by a nurse.
Yes.
You could sense the urgency in the voice, the narration of the accompanying the video. So I think things were really looking very bad until perhaps now that they are telling us no life was lost and that power has been restored. But these things will not happen, not in the 21st century in Ghana, with all the efforts we've made over the years and with all the experiences we had 7 years ago. This is incredibly unbelievable.
The statement says, of course, it points to the happening of the incident on the 26th of March. It talks about the fact that the dedicated generator set to the neonatal intensive care unit tripped off for a short period, and the hospital's electricians worked to restore power to the unit until the national grid was restored. It said it was restored within 2 hours, so it took them 2 hours. Imagine surgery being performed or something else, and they have a problem with their plant or their generator. That is enough time for someone to lose his or her life. Even 20 minutes can do that.
Yeah, that's
and then it is worth noting that no lives were lost as a result of this power outage. And the assurance to the general public is that the facility will continue to put the health and safety of its patients at the core of its business, which is all good. I remember there was an incident once that took me to that hospital. But you ask yourself, how about the other hospitals and all the other happenings? You are coming from Kumasi, look at Komfo-Anokye and the problems they are facing, accommodation for medical staff, among others. Then you add this power situation, and I don't know. I don't know.
At times you cannot simply comprehend what is going on. Look, you mentioned the Komfo-Anokye Hospital, a hospital that was built to herald our independence back in 1957. We used to call it G, those of us who grew up in Kumasi, Yeko G. That was a hospital built in the late 50s. And you wonder why this hospital will be neglected for all these decades, whilst we try to embark on new hospitals, which takes years to complete, and it has taken Dumsor himself to launch an appeal to refurbish the hospital. The same thing seems to be happening to Kolebu Hospital. I read something about it a couple of days ago, and they are facing the same thing. So you wonder what our leaders think about development. Development, is it simply to build something new and neglect the old and keep building? That is not it. Well, we hear of a maintenance culture. It's real. We do not devote any energies to maintain what we have invested in. So to see Kumasi Hospital, Komfanochi Hospital, before the renovation, reduced to a village hospital, that was pathetic.
You think CAF has been reduced to a village hospital?
Oh my goodness, I was there. I've been there to visit patients. Go to the walls. Cracked walls, ceilings sinking down, painted walls, beds that I don't know how long they've been without changes. It was a bad situation. And that's why I think Otumfuo stepped in to save the situation. But why should it take him? When we have a Minister of Health, people who are paid to supervise our institutions. I mean, and when you are budgeting, you don't budget for maintenance, and you see this thing rotting in your face and sit by until it collapses. There are so many state structures like this. The other day I saw a video of the Independence Square that Senate up, Independence 1957.
Right.
Almost rotten. At the center of town, this is where the president passes. Everybody drives around that, and yet we sit by for it to rot.
Recently, there was an incident. You know, part of the place close by is overgrown with weeds. The same way the Revolution Square,
yes,
opposite the Jubilee House. I always say that, listen, it may be that it comes in a certain context and brings back certain memories, but it's either we take it away or we treat that place well. You know what? Because it's in close proximity to the seat of the presidency.
Right.
Pass by. Recently, I took some footage from there, and I was sad. And something I was discussing with someone yesterday, before we go back to the Tema General Hospital and just look at the video. The former seat of the presidency, the castle. Look at, I think you saw images, was it late last year?
I saw.
Fungus. The whole place has been left to rot. And I tell myself, why is it that we behave like this? Because on the other side, I don't like playing this game, but imagine this in Europe or America. They would have quickly turned it into some sort of museum because guess what? Rawlings was there. Atta Mills was there. Kufuor was there. Immediately do something. Oh, this was the table at which Kufuor sat. This was where Rawlings
slept.
And they would monetize it.
Right.
Is it that we can't think and the place is rotting? If for nothing at all, there are also governmental agencies without offices. Couldn't we convert? Like, there's no use for that place.
Look, this is really a gold mine in many situations. Other countries, this would be a gold mine. A castle built by the Danes and changing hands throughout our history, right on the coast. And you see, I at times you wonder, what is it that we learn when you go to school? Maybe we learn something differently from what others are taught. Because our minds are not conditioned to do the right things. This is a precious monument that must be preserved. And I think when the last government moved out of the place, it was announced that it was going to be turned into a presidential museum, which was an excellent idea. And through that, we could have maintained it. Now we are sitting by, but you see what is going to happen in the near future if another government to come to say, we have gotten 20 million, 100 million from IMF to refurbish the castle.
Yeah.
We go for loan to do something we could have done to prevent the rot. Because loan giving is so easy to us, we forget to think about ways to maintain ourselves. We resort to loans. Don't we go for loans for sanitation work in this country? So you see, I think the whole idea of governance must be re-examined in this country. And for me, the greatest downside is the over-concentration of power at the center of governance. The fact that we have killed, even though we claim to have district assemblies. On my way to your studio, on your other show, radio, I heard a story of one place, Aladura or somewhere, where gutters are used as dumpsters.
Our filth exhibition.
Yes, exactly. And I tell myself, this is not something for the president to be called. It's not something even for the ministry to be called. It's something for the local governance system. But because we have destroyed the local governance system, we have a semblance of assembly people who are completely ineffective because the elites, those in power, want everything to come to them. You see, there's no democracy at the grassroots. So everybody looks up to the central government for simple things like that to be done. And I think in this conversation, I'll tell you. In some years, decades ago, we have what we call self-help. When you drive through the roads on this country, you see signboard, a project, self-help project. I don't know if you are old enough to have seen that. Self-help projects.
I don't recall those.
Well, I tell you, I'm an old guy. Self-help projects, you know, where local communities were taking responsibility for their local needs. We have to begin to look at development at the community level. Let people take charge of themselves, so we don't always look up to Accra for the basic things that we need. Community-oriented development is what I'm talking about. And because we have concentrated power at the center, even a common classroom block to be built will have to come from Accra. Directions will have to come up from Accra. We have what you call, in the 2004, I led a delegation to Germany to look at their decentralization system. They have a beautiful phrase for that. They call it help for self-help. In other words, local communities have to help themselves before the federal government comes in with support. Help for self-help.
So look at the Swiss system and the
correct
devolution. Yes. You would also see
devolution, power devolution. And this is shown in the United States. They have a federal system, but the state system within the state, districts, communities, upon their own police inspectors and police officers. That is how you develop. Development cannot be imposed on us by a government that may not know his left from the right. So the initiatives of people, innovative skills of people are killed at the local level because everybody has to come to the national level to be known, to be somebody in this country. And for me, that's the downside. All the problems that we can talk about today, you find the roots in this system we have created that is killing the creativity of individuals because not all of us can function at the national level. The communities should be the focus of our development. And I'm yet to hear any of these aspiring leaders even talking about the need to develop our communities, giving power, devolving power, so that we can have our DCs to be responsible directly to the people, we can initiate projects, and the national government will simply provide the support where necessary. That should be the focus of our development.
Let me quickly do this. I'll come back to some of those points, but I don't want us to lose track of that point. I want us to make it before we go. The video, the footage from the Tema General Hospital, I just want you to take a look at this because Dumsor has become our reality. Some are forecasting that whoever takes over, whether NPP or NDC from next year, is going to be problematic. So you take a look at that.
This baby is on CPAP. There's no light to connect, off. No flow meter to even connect with the oxygen. If we don't get light in few minutes, probability that we might lose a lot of babies is high. From Agyeman-Duah, the whole world is full. No CPAP, no light. Everywhere is off. Everywhere is off. Babies are in data. This baby is not fine. CPAP is off. No light to connect. No flow meter to connect to the oxygen. There's oxygen but no flow meter. From Agyeman-Duah. This is not right. We have about 10 critically ill babies, all on CPAP. The whole place is dark. If you don't get light in few minutes, the probability that we might lose a lot of babies is high. From Agyeman-Duah. That is not funny at all. From Agyeman intensive care units, where critically ill babies are being monitored. Everywhere is off. Everywhere. Babies are on CPAP. Babies are on CPAP. No flow meter. No extra flow meter to connect to the oxygen. At least that would have helped without the CPAPs. That would have helped.
So there you have it. Prof, you saw for yourself.
I did. And
Ayasifim.
Benjamin, you see, this is
Ayasifim.
I mean, it's, what can we say? That's why I said this reminded me of Gaza, seeing on Al Jazeera showing pictures of Al-Shafa Hospital and children without incubators and no lights and all. We are not in a war situation, are we?
We are not, but here we find ourselves. But moving on from there, you started talking about the filth exhibition. So let me just pick your quick thoughts on that.
The
filth exhibition, what you were listening to on radio. The filth engulfing Accra is, I mean, you go through town. Don't even mention, I don't want to single out any places because some may feel that you are denigrating where they. But you go around Accra. One of the things that usually hits me, cattle and the rest, major highway, you see cattle crossing. And some of them are displaying their dung on the road and everything. It's just such a menace. But we were promised the cleanest city in Africa. No one had to hold the president then, hold his neck and say, give us the cleanest city in Africa. But at least we should have had some semblance of a cleaner Accra, even if not the cleanest city in Africa. What do you see on that score?
Well, this wasn't the first time a president promised. I think, if I recall correctly, I stand to be corrected, when President Evans Atta Mills was in power, getting into power, he also promised 100 days of something. Yeah. 100 days of cleaning Accra in particular. 100 days passed and nothing happened. So I'm not surprised another one came to promise making Accra the cleanest cities. And of course, that is part of the erosion of trust in our leaders. Making statements that they don't seriously think about and promising things that they cannot deliver. And again, if you want a city to be clean, it shouldn't be the job of the central government. You see, that's why I'm talking about reforming our governance structures. Sanitation rightly belongs to local government. As little boys in the villages, we are town council people. They will come and inspect the barrel where you keep your water to make sure it's clean.
Tankasi would come for you if
that's right.
Things were not in the proper order.
And weekends, the village will mobilize people to go to the public toilet to clean it up. And when there was a need for another toilet, the community will construct it. I guess the point I'm making is that the system we have right now has simply put everything in the hands of the central government.
Concentration of power.
Concentration of power. Over-concentration of power. Sanitation is not the job of a president. President should be thinking of bigger things, the bigger picture, the vision.
And this is where you feel the assemblies and district chief executives and municipal chief executives are failing.
Precisely. That is their job. So I think one of the downsides of our democracy is neglecting the participation of people at the grassroots. I call this top-heavy democracy, elitist democracy. It's not on the ground. The assembly elections we hold, what do they mean? Because they do it without resources at the local level to undertake anything. So I think we have to begin to refocus on what I call community-oriented development. Let's get to the communities. There's no need for...
How do we do that?
Simply
the system is what it is. How do we do that?
That's why some of us are calling for constitutional reforms. We need to reform the Constitution, even though, you see, I think on Independence Day, our president said that there's no rush to change the Constitution or to reform it. You see, our success as a democratic state is simply in the area of elections, what we call electoral democracy. We succeed in changing and retaining governments through the ballot box for the past 30 years. That success has not translated into the development that people want to have. So we need to change the structure to enable all Ghanaians, no matter where they exist, to be looking at their communities as a source of political power. It doesn't make sense to me for someone to finish the university tomorrow and join a political party with nothing behind him. He's lucky the party wins. He's made a minister. Where was the training?
Yeah.
And when they come and in a few years they build mansions, we wonder. Because when you're a minister, when you're a big public official, you are compelled to have certain facilities because people come to you for money and you don't have a house so quickly, you have to build a house.
You know what that reminds me of? The Kwame Nkrumah Ideological Institute.
In Winneba.
And what purpose? Because having lived in Cuba, one thing you see, whether you want to say it is propaganda or whatever, they start you right from when you're a baby.
Right.
You are ingrained, I mean, it is ingrained, imprinted in you. The thinking. So speak to any Cuban, I'm not talking about those who have moved to Miami and the rest, speak to those who live in Cuba. They toe a certain line. They think in a certain way. It is nationalistic, it is this and that. Of course, it will not be as social in thinking as maybe when I was there.
That's right.
Compared to now, after Raul and others came through. But there's a certain national perspective, which we seem to lack on that front. Some have even suggested that the National Cathedral project, I know I'm bringing in something else, since it's not, that they should turn it into something like that, to train people for such
What you're
endeavors.
talking about, Benjamin, is simply to look at our educational system and what it's producing. I'm a product of the Young Pioneers. I was in it for 2 years before.
Oh, wow.
I was in the Young Pioneer. And I recall all the things that we were told to be nationalistic, patriotic, and all that. Of course, somehow it was abused by those who were hero-worshipping Nkrumah and turned into a kind of a cultist kind of stuff. But the essence of it is what we just said. How citizens become patriotic, how they become nationalistic, non-toxic nationalism, I should say. And again, you look at our democracy, and it seems like people think the only way to democratic success is to be as liberal as the Western countries. So we talk about liberal democracy. Of course, we've got to be liberal. Look, when this past independence, when I heard you and others discussing the nation and whether independence has brought us anything good, and we are comparing ourselves to Singapore, we like to do that, don't we?
We do.
Have we ever asked ourselves how Singapore made it?
I know. And once you mentioned liberal democracy, I was going to ask you about Lee Kuan Yew. Because those 31 years they used to move from third world to first world, democracy, yes, but it was a different...
That is the point.
Different trajectory.
That is the point. And with some of my friends, the intellectuals, we meet and we talk about it, and they think I'm illiberal. I'm talking about dictatorship or something. I say no. Lee Kuan Yew and his successors, if you read them, they tell us of 3 things for development. And that's what they did to achieve progress in their country. First is integrity. Integrity. And recently there was an election in Singapore, and if you followed it, you'll be amazed. Nobody comes from anywhere to become the chief minister. There's a process, rigorous process, where your background, everything is checked. And I'll come to that if there's time. So integrity. Then they talk of discipline. Discipline from public officials to ordinary citizens. That's why, in fact, today, I was there years ago, and I knew that if you chewing gum, and you throw it on the street, they will arrest you.
You spit.
You spit.
You get arrested.
You spit. And you know the beginnings. If you read his book, you realize that when he started this, because Singapore is a small country, it's an island country, so they don't have the privilege or the luxury, I should say, of space. So he said to build up. You know, building up is building high-rise buildings and moving the peasants into this. He told them, you cannot bring your pigs to a 7, 8, 9th floor buildings. But the peasants say no. He said, okay, take them. Some carry their pigs, you know, in Asia they like pork. They carry them to the 7th, 8th floor. And then they realize they cannot live with a pig there. So gradually they all send the pigs away. That's how he brought them to understand that for the kind of development we are pursuing, We cannot do what you used to do in the past. We've got to change attitude and everything. So integrity, discipline, and the third and final one they will tell you is what they call the unflinching commitment to nation building. These are the three key things these Asian countries have succeeded in doing. So you ask yourself, in Ghana, extending to so many other African countries, we talk of integrity. Who are the people who will elect to rule us? Do we care? The Constitution gives only 3 conditions. A citizen, right? Not below 40.
Yeah, of a certain age.
Then, sane mind. These are the 3.
And how we even determine sanity.
We don't.
It's another issue altogether.
So anybody can come in today and with money in your hands, seek the presidency. We don't care about the background of the person. Over the years, has this person been involved in any deals, arrested? I don't know if our security agencies check that. But the fact that anybody can go and be registered to run for the presidency raises a lot of red flags to me.
Right. And speaking of this, continuity and sometimes that, you also look at the examples on the continent. I mean, look at Yoweri Museveni.
Yes.
Look at Senegal and what has happened there.
Yes.
Thankfully, it's been resolved with Bassirou Faye.
That's right.
44-year-old. I'm so excited about him, and I hope he sets a very good precedent for young people.
Yes.
But then you look at the other side, where you've had Cameroon,
There.
Uganda,
Yes.
where you've had presidents there for 3 decades, 4 decades, Equatorial Guinea,
Yes.
right?
Wema.
And then you look at Fon Nyasingbe and what he has done in recent times.
Yeah.
The extension by 1 year. And you ask yourself, is it necessarily
He's now
staying on for long that
he's now
needs
even
development?
proposing that president will be elected by parliament, but not by popular vote. Yeah, they might just announce that a few months ago. You see, for me, let's be careful here. Longevity in office is not necessarily evil if the person in charge, the person in power, has a certain character, desirable character. Because Lee Kuan Yew, as you mentioned, was there for about 26 years.
Yeah.
He changed his country. Mahathir was there for 23 years. He changed Malaysia. And even in Africa today, we are beginning to see progressive changes in Rwanda. Kagame has been there for 18, going to 20 years. Longevity is what enabled them to do that. But when you talk of longevity, and the character in charge is a destroyer, like Mobutu being there for 33 years and destroying the nation. You see? So for me, longevity may be good. Perhaps when the former president Kufuor was leaving office in his last statement address, if you remember, he said, look, let's make this at least 5 years a tenure. Because you get into office, first year you are trying to find your feet. The 2 years you're trying to do your stuff. Then the 4th year is coming, you're thinking of elections. And our leaders, therefore, don't have what it takes to plan long term. And one of the problems we have in this country is precisely this unbridled competition for power by two parties. So we don't have continuity. We don't have long vision, right? So we do things quickly to satisfy people, and in the end, we don't satisfy them because you don't have to. Singapore did not become what it is in 4 years or 8 years. That's a fact. Malaysia did not become what it is.
So what are you proposing? I mean, some countries have as much as 6 years.
Yeah, like
some have
6
5
years.
What is your proposal? What do you think we can do in Ghana?
Well, for me, certainly the 4 year is very limiting. And if you're extending it, if you're extending the duration, now at the same time, we have to have mechanisms in place to check whoever the leader. Because see, the danger is, if you are not lucky to get an upright person and you put him there for 6 years, you are locked in for 6 years. But if you are lucky to have a good person, 6 years is good for you.
But some would also say that, listen, it can either favor you or not favor you.
Right.
Now, I'll not mention any president's name, but imagine the presidents we've had. And imagine some of them had done, let's say, 6 years, right? And they were doing another 6. it could be disastrous.
It doesn't have to be another 6, because depending on your character, your performance, the citizen, again, you're attributing certain value or quality to the citizens to be able to decide, look, this guy cannot go again. See, democracy is such a thing, you've got to think through. And I think one of the mistakes we've been making, or we have made with our constitution, is to mirror the Western democratic practice. And democratic practice is not the same as principled democracy, the universal values that all human beings treasure. It's different from practicing it. Practicing it enables countries to tailor the practice according to their needs, their history, their tradition, their culture. That's what democracy is. So when you follow blindly, because America has 4 years, let's have 4 years, why didn't you say France has 6 or 7 years during that time? Why did we choose 4 years? And there are so many things about our democratic practice that we need to critically review.
Yeah? I see. Let's also look at this latest tussle between the executive and the legislature on the LGBTQI plus bill. What do you make of it? Now we have the Supreme Court saying, well, Parliament, your hands are not tied, you can go ahead. We have the precedent of Mr. President on the 4th of March saying his hands were tied, when in fact the case wasn't even in court. It was in court on the 5th. Some say both entities are being dishonest, or it's power play. What do you see?
Certainly it's a power play. But let me tell you this. It's healthy for the legislature to hold the executive to account. That is critical. And I'm happy in so many ways this parliament is really playing that role more effectively than before. I guess it's because the speaker we have today belongs to the minority party. So it's easier for him to do that. And more importantly, we have a hung parliament. So there's no one dominant party that can have his way. I can easily imagine a situation where if the ruling party were in a majority, this bill would have been passed or rejected, or maybe it wouldn't have come out at all if the president didn't want it. Okay? But where our representatives, 275 MPs, where they have met, deliberated on our behalf and made a decision unanimously, I think the executive ought to respect that. That's very important, because they represent, for better or for worse, they represent the collective interest of Ghanaians. And if the president has serious reservations, I think he has every right during the process of making the bill of intervening in different ways.
Right.
Democracy requires that kind of interface. You cannot sit here aloof and the legislature is here aloof and think we are ruining the country. There is need for collaboration between these top branches of government. And even after the bill has been passed, the president could have still met the speaker. If they did, I do not know. But publicly, we don't know that. That they could have invited the speaker, have breakfast. Look, let's discuss this. This is a major national issue. You know, maybe the reason why I'm resisting this is because A, B, C, D. The speaker is a human being. He's a Ghanaian. You understand? And being a speaker, he also have a way how to get parliament to understand certain things. But to really reject, not even reject, you say, don't bring it to me at all, which is unconstitutional. The bill should come.
The clerk of parliament was rejected 3 times, and the statement by the secretary to the president is basically telling him, don't come here.
And these are highly responsible individuals who have been in this business for so long. They've fought in the trenches, they know democracy, they've spoken democracy, they've eaten democracy, and they are behaving undemocratically. So I think always we have to respect the process and see how it works. But we cannot undermine the Constitution as it is today. We are not happy with it, but until we change it, we are bound by the Constitution.
So you feel, just to quote you, you feel the executive acted undemocratically in that?
Oh, by just telling Parliament not to do its job of submitting a legislation to the presidency. He has a job to do. And you know, when he gets to the president, he has 3 options, isn't it? Say, I'll veto it, I won't sign. or I need certain amendments, or whatever. There are three options, I understand.
You can veto it.
Huh? He can also say, look, there's a problem with this.
Exactly.
We need to discuss. We need to renegotiate. So you can use those medium to see what you want. But to stop it as if it's a use my word, leprosy. I don't want to touch it. It's not the proper way to do. Because the legislature has its own powers. The Constitution provides it to make laws. The president's duty is to take it, review it, and make your judgment. But you cannot stop it in its track when the job is done by the legislature.
Let's get into some core governance issues. I'd like us to start with corruption and where we are. I don't want to get into the bit about indices, corruption perception index and all of that, but on the ground with, and this was a crucial issue in 2016,
Sure.
The economy, corruption. Have we been able to tame that beast?
You know, Benjamin, this is a very important question. And again, I feel even tired talking about corruption because, as one president said, it started from Adam.
The days of Adam.
Yeah, you know. But more seriously, this is an issue that has bedeviled us all these 30 years of our republic, Fourth Republic. And because of that, we have established institutions from Shraj to Yoko to this, to that, to OSP. The conclusion I've come to, Benjamin, I'm very sincere in this one. Institutions by themselves are meaningless. Because people talk about capacity building, institutional building. You can, look, we started capacity building of institutions in the 90s when I started the civil society work with IEA. Then 1998, Jima Bodi and I founded the CDD. Institutional building, institutional capacity. And we are creating more. For me today, that is not the issue. It's not the solution. It boils down to the individuals that we place in to head institutions, the character of the individuals, and of course the character of the people generally. Because institutions can be as good as the one who leads it.
Why does Nkrumah's words come to mind? So in this light, we could also say our institutions are meaningless unless they are accompanied by the right people at the helm.
The right people with integrity. Correct. And the system that permits these people to work. A classic example. Some people were euphoric about the appointment of the SPO, OSP, the Office of the Special Prosecutor. But some months ago, he came public to say, look, didn't he come to sing that song to us? So you can even have the person with the integrity, with the courage and everything. If the system itself is not working, he's not going to succeed. So I think there are two things here when you're talking about corruption. For me, I'm not interested in creating new institutions because they are just a drain on the economy. They don't produce anything. And I'm not even interested in new laws. Ghana has all the laws on the books. I'm interested in the quality of people who are put in charge and at the same time, the quality of Ghanaians. There's a certain mindset that perhaps integrity is not part of governance. It is. In fact, when I was talking about the Asian countries, I mentioned integrity as number one. And is a missing link in our development. People gloss over it. And as we're approaching the campaign period, I'm hoping the aspiring presidents will address the issue of integrity. Because when you talk of corruption, you are talking about integrity of public officials. Those who cannot be bought by money to do the wrong things. Those who can reject an offer that will lead to building a road that requires 6 inches asphalt and ends up with 1 inch, so the next rainfall, the whole road is washed away. Integrity. You know? And I've listened to you, Benjamin, some of your shows talking about these issues with passion. And people might think, who is this guy? He thinks he has integrity. No, we all have our weaknesses, don't we? But these are critical issues when you're talking about governance. All the successful countries, besides the Western countries, America, the way it's developed, historically, we know that America has a different way of developing on the back of blacks and all that. We know that. But in modern times, to develop, you need that. And we don't have it. And nobody seems to bother. And that, for me, is the greatest dent on what we want to do. Getting the right people, leadership that has integrity. We don't.
Well, they say our leaders reflect us. And
people get the people get the leaders that they deserve, something like that.
but sticking to policy, you've heard of the one student, one tablet bits, Ghana smart schools and everything in between. In fact, that promise, the laptops and everything, were made in 2016. So it's been 7 years on. You would ask yourself, because this is not the first time, in 2008, this was done. Something similar, a promise that was made. In 2012, another promise. You ask yourself, why would you wait to execute in an electoral year? What is in there? But the feasibility of it, people have said, students don't have what they will eat. What's a more tablets, or more laptop? And even when you look at the budgets, the numbers presented to Parliament, and you look at the actual numbers, the 2.3 or so million, you realize that it's only a fraction of them who are going to get this. So what are we really doing? Is it cosmetic or is it real? What's your take?
You know, we have politics of promises in this country. Doing politics and seeking power is all about making promises. Just as somebody just promised that if he wins, he will dredge the sea to Kumasi, so Kumasi can have a port. I'm talking about screening our presidential candidates. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They are promising just to get votes. Because seriously, and you're right, there are certain fundamental problems with education. Kids are still lying on their stomachs to write, to learn to write or to read. Some are on the trees, some are in, I've been seeing the exposures you and other media houses have been giving us in very dilapidated structures. And these are not priorities. Well, some people may believe that to develop, just have an elite group that is highly skilled and all that. Maybe that's what people are thinking, but not mass-based. So, again, this issue of laptops reflects this mindset of governments that we have to feed the people all the time. You can have an arrangement with any banking institution where teachers can be assisted to buy this, their personal laptops. You can. A government can give them some guarantee loan or through the banks so they can pay.
Right.
This spoon feeding, you see, that's why earlier I talked about government, our governance system being top heavy and everything is at the national level. Our governments have this mindset that if we have to develop, it should sit in Accra and spoon feed everybody in every corner of the country. It doesn't work that way. It's a simple thing, laptop. These days, it can be expensive though, but below $1,000, you can get a very solid laptop. In fact, you can scale down to $500. You can get a laptop that will do the job that any teacher wants. And this is what we cannot find a way to get our teachers to have, if that will help them in their work as teachers. For government to promise this, and 7 years we're still trying to see if you can meet it, and you can never meet it. There's no money for that. And this comes back to integrity again. Promising things you know you cannot deliver.
In fact, in the case of the teachers, even moving away from the students, they paid 30%, and some would say even the rest of it was paid from their SNIT component. And 100,000 plus of them have not got those laptops.
Still they are paid.
In other words, they paid, but they didn't get it.
Why would the government get itself into this? So when we talk about trust, losing confidence and trust in government, which is in political terms, trust is the biggest capital in governance. When your citizens trust you because you are consistent in what you say and what you do. Consistency. All this lead to people losing trust in government, suspicious of government. I cannot have a successful governance when people do not trust what you say because you don't do what you say. So it boils down to the issue of integrity I'm talking about. Because if I know too well, then I can't give you this. I will not come and tell you, come for this. And then let me wait for 5 years and still don't get it.
Trust, integrity.
Yes.
Two issues I want us to wrap with. One has to do with taxes. And nowadays you make a purchase or you go somewhere to eat or you do anything and you are looking at around 22% in taxes. You must prepare for that shock, 22%, more than 1/5. Recently, the vice president said the GRA was harassing people. The business community, at least the Importers and Exporters Association, came and said, we'll not play those shenanigans anymore. What have you done with e-levy and everything in between? And we also know that the head of the GRA has been ousted, and now Julie Esiam.
He's not been ousted, he's retired.
Indeed. In fact, there was that story about his being 62 and
That's right, so he's retired.
So the president has terminated his appointment, so to speak, and replaced him. I want you to talk on that. And then finally, when you're done, governance. Tomorrow is Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo's birthday.
Wow. Happy birthday.
He's been in power for, what, close to 8 years now.
Right.
How would you score him on governance on a scale of 1 to 10? So those two quick questions and we're gone. Let's do that in about 2.5 minutes.
The taxes, certainly when government gets desperate looking for money to run its operations, if you are not producing to gain money, income, then you go out to tax. And I think our government has been overtaxing people because our productive capacity has not been fully exploited and utilized. So the need for resources for government is really great. And now that even our access to foreign loans has been more or less blocked, they are turning to people to overtax them. And taxation has a limit. You reach a certain point, you can no longer tax people. Otherwise, a rebellion will be on your hands. And that's where I guess we are going. One of the candidates has promised to revise the taxation system and do a flat tax. I don't know how it works, whether that's going to reduce.
I mean, we've heard Dr. Bawumia say that, yes.
Oh, okay. I don't know whether that's going to reduce the government's income or is going to increase it or going to stagnate it. I don't know. But whatever it is, knowing too well that our coffers are literally empty and we are not getting easy access to this foreign money, I'm afraid, unless a government embarks on aggressive domestic policy of regenerating our productive capacity. And here, let me be blunt. There are so many things we as Ghanaians can do for ourselves we don't need to import. And the first one is food. We don't need to be importing all this food. In the 70s, again, let me remind ourselves, in the 70s under General Echampong, Operation Feed Yourself was able to make us self-sufficient in rice production for 3 years. This is a historical fact.
With the Dr. A.O. Abudus and the rest.
That's right. You got the names. We did it before. And today, we are importing how? $800 million a year or $400 million a year? We can't even find it. And when they produce poor distribution and processing, the challenges will stop the fair distribution of what we produce. So we've done it again. So if the government wants to reduce the burden of taxation on people, then the focus will be on how we produce ourselves, for ourselves, what we can produce here. And I can go on and on. Burkina Faso, you were talking about cocoa. I saw the program last night. Burkina Faso is saying that in 5 years they should be able to export cocoa on the Sahara. not to talk about their determination to be self-sufficient in food production, because the recent decision by ECOWAS to block them has taught them a lesson.
Right, and just to get to the final point, then like Dr. Richmond Etuahene was sharing, we are here with all the lush, very fertile, verdant land pasture,
yes.
And we import onions and tomatoes and the rest from the Sahel.
That's right.
The Sahel.
Ironic. It's not ironic.
But on the final point, governance, how would you score Akufo-Addo on a scale of 1 to 10? I don't know whether you'll be charitable because tomorrow is his birthday.
Mr. President, happy birthday. Frankly, I have never rated presidents in terms of their performance, but I'll tell you why. First of all, the good people of Ghana are the best to rate a president and his government. Even though he's leaving office, his party is contesting.
Right.
And I think the good people of Ghana will rate the performance of this government and the president during elections. That's what I believe in.
But the reason I brought this in, and you notice I didn't make it general, I said governance because that is your area.
I know.
In terms of governance.
There have been up and downs here. There have been up and downs. And I think if we take the area of integrity, this government, this president has not impressed me with anything to that effect. I've not been impressed by that. But you see, again, we all make mistakes, especially politicians, to think that governance is satisfying the material needs of people. It's not correct. Two sides. People want to be satisfied materially, and they also want to be satisfied psychically.
Right.
Psychic satisfaction, psychological, if you will. So I know one regime that did so much in infrastructural development, but the party lost only because psychically people did not believe it was the right one. So if you provide all the schools and all the hospitals and all build all the roads, and yet people feel like it's meaningless because we haven't gotten what you want, they haven't satisfied their psychological needs.
Okay.
So this president, I think, listening to what people say and what I read, and I do talk a lot to people, psychically, a lot of people are not happy with the performance of this government. That's what I can say.
Right. Thank you very much, Prof, for having breakfast with us. We're so grateful that today you came into the studio.
It's my pleasure. And thanks for having me.
It's a privilege. We're very grateful to you. That is our guest for AM Exclusive this morning, Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah, former UN Senior Governance Advisor. He joined us for this all-important discussion. Do stay with us. There's still a lot more we have coming your way.